Hello, dear friends. We are sincerely happy to welcome you again. Today we will have a conversation with the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings.
Igor Mikhailovich, at a previous meeting we touched upon the subject of how differently we look at this world, how differently we perceive it. This often takes place because every person has his own information field and his own life experience, and every person has his own system of values. So he measures the reality around him with his own ruler. But despite the fact that everyone has their own view behind the window, each of us understands that what is now happening outside the window, so to say, the landscape is gloomy, and something has to be changed. We have to save this world. This world requires transformation, and most importantly, we need to build a world where the value of life will be paramount, and where everyone will live happily. In the previous video, we touched upon the point that for a human, a happy life also means a guarantee of the future, that at the very least, tomorrow will not be worse than today, and it is also contentment with today. Unfortunately, the consumerist format of society cannot guarantee us such a wonderful and happy future. But the creative society exactly guarantees such a wonderful and happy life for every person. And as of today, unfortunately, we people cannot even imagine what kind of opportunities open up for a human in the creative society. In the previous video, you said that the human doesn't even understand that certain elementary everyday chores, not to mention the interplanetary format, but even such a chore as brushing one's teeth will be eliminated in the creative society, that they are absolutely unnecessary, that it is absolutely stupid when we have technologies of absolute control over the body. All you need to do is take a shower, and your hygiene and health issues are resolved.
Well, let's put it as follows. The very idea of taking a shower. You take a shower and it all goes away, my friends. Yes, last time we really mentioned that you don't even have to brush your teeth. But also, taking a shower doesn't mean washing your body with water. I'll put it this way. Right?
Right, but that's how consciousness actually draws it.
Yes. It draws exactly this kind of picture. We enter a shower cabin, like nowadays, turn on the water, soap ourselves, wash ourselves, and so on. But if we indeed have power, the real one, and can control the material world at the level of elementary particles, including our body, it will be foolish to wash off, let's say, that very flaky skin that we lose every day in huge amounts, as well as other waste products of our body excreted through the pores of our skin, and so on. Why? Because those are particles. It's a valuable material that may be converted again to regenerate our body and to keep it, shall we say, healthy, and so forth. It's like we said regarding microorganisms that inhabit and harm us nowadays, which are pathogenic and cause us a lot of problems. Meanwhile, in the creative society, it will be like finding a hidden treasure. This is really true.
So, in principle, using water in the shower will be eliminated.
Of course. Again, just imagine. This means either, let's say, like nowadays, laying those very pipes for people to wash themselves. It is burdensome and wrong. Yes, we can condense water, which is...
Water supply, sewage facilities, all this is necessary.
Well, everything is possible and necessary, but again, a sewage system will not be needed. I'm saying it right away. It is true indeed. Why? Because all our waste products that form as a result of our life activity, such as food leftovers, any kind of garbage, and everything else are all valuable things that are material and can be reused by simply converting them, including water. What is water? Well, again,
it's just interesting that taking a shower or a bath is actually associated sort of with a boon of civilization.
In the modern world, yes.
Not everyone can even afford it.
As of today, unfortunately, yes, a great many people are left without access to clean, especially drinking water and the like. But if we look at the developed civilizations, at least based on the information available today, even on the records in history about those very Apexians. After all, a lot of things started from them, and it all went through Atlantis and reached us. It is never mentioned anywhere that they took a shower by washing their bodies with water. As for the manuscripts that have remained, by the way, that's an interesting subject, friends, because if we look, for example, at how Romans lived and at the world in the times of Romans, there were bathhouses,
Those bathhouses, right?
there were public baths for the poor, and the rich had their own baths, swimming pools. I mean, they...
Yes, there was an entire cult around it all.
Absolutely. There was a cult of cleanliness, beauty, health, and everything else. They were very conscious about that, and everybody lived that way. Europe also lived that way. But then, at one fine moment, medieval Europe suddenly became dirty. They simply stopped washing.
Unwashed Europe.
Right, unwashed Europe. The question is why? There are a lot of versions, everyone interprets it in their own way. But if we face the truth, the first to stop washing were the priests. Later on, imitating them and understanding why they stopped washing, let's say, the privileged people, kings, their entourage and the like stopped washing. And then this already spread to the poor. In fact, when manuscripts were found that actually described, well, those were manuscripts from the times of Atlantis, which described how the Apexians lived, how gods lived on earth. So it was described there that humans washed with water, while gods did not, and they said that washing one's body with water was far too wasteful.
As a matter of fact, the church actually abolished all those bathhouses. But what did they say? That in this way a person sort of washes the grace of himself, while in fact the essence is the same, that it is...
This is where it is simply ridiculous. The civilization that has reached...
Right, the fourth level of
You
development.
can imagine what it means, right? Naturally, they have already completely forgotten what it means to wash their bodies. And of course, this is extremely wasteful. How's that? After all, this is an extra income, isn't it? When the excess is taken and forwarded towards repairing what is missing in their bodies. Of course, this is wasteful. It is funny now, but imagine such a possibility, friends, that you really have such a converter. Let it be in the form of a cabin, habitual to us, so that it would be easier to imagine. You enter it, sort of to take a shower, press a button, and literally in an instant, your body is absolutely perfectly clean, down to every micron. The excess hair is removed, wherever you want, I mean, you don't have to shave, exactly as you desire, and your teeth are cleaned. And even the wax is taken out of your ears. Well, I'm speaking figuratively, because everything unnecessary is simply removed from your body. This is really so. And even what you've just thought about is not needed either. It can all be done elementarily with such converters. In other words, those are tremendous opportunities. For example, a man was, I don't know, repairing a car. This certainly sounds ridiculous at that level. Well, you know, a machine is a machine, whatever it would be, it can break down. But the man likes his car, maybe he did something in it manually, I don't know, repaired it or performed maintenance.
To recall the past.
Yes, to recall the past, so he's all covered with grease and dirt. Should he go and wash this off or actually go into such a cabin? Would it make a difference? Why? Because what are grease and fuel oil in our understanding? They are hydrocarbons.
The most valuable thing.
The most valuable thing there can be.
A resource.
Certainly. So imagine taking a resource like this and washing it up with water. I mean, again, that very water is a rather valuable product. Well, it is less valuable than, let's say, hydrocarbons. Isn't that stupid? It is stupid.
Igor Mikhailovich, with each video, little by little new horizons of the creative society open up. I even recall after the video when you asked where the mass is, where a ton of bugs is, when I realized what volume those very particles occupy. That on the tip of a needle the entire FIFA, the entire soccer team, all the fans and so on can fit. And I realized that consciousness was drawing this a little bit differently. It imagined even those cartridges somewhat according to its standard figurative thinking, which it is currently used to, that those are either floppy disks or something else. Thus, with every video, any of our basic everyday routine things open up in a new way, that this is...
Well, we just cannot imagine this because we don't have an analog in our consciousness.
Yes, right.
Whereas, if we were to compare those very cartridges, I would compare them based on what we have nowadays. They are, let's say, like a set of 12 nanotubes. I mean, imagine, friends, those who know what nanotubes are, 12 pieces a few centimeters long. I mean, this is literally nothing. Well, for visual perception, while in actual fact, this is a huge reserve for a person.
Here is another question, Igor Mikhailovich. In the previous video, you said that in fact there will be no exclusive things, so to say. You then gave the example of a painting and so forth, that if a person has made something, it will be available
For everyone.
for all the people.
That's actually the point.
And some people say, well, does it turn out that such a thing as uniqueness of something will disappear in the creative society at all?
I disagree.
I mean, why is possessing something exclusive so important for people in general, let's say?
It's a consumerist format because everything exclusive costs money and attracts attention. In other words, it's a pursuit of attention and simply envy. Either you are envious or people envy you. Whereas envy, friends, is an investment of attention in a greater amount, that is, a hunt for the power of real. Let's not repeat ourselves, we've told you about that. What it is and why it is so valuable. Isn't that true? Let's look into this.
Uniqueness.
Yes, what is uniqueness nowadays? Well, a painting by some author in a single copy. This is good, isn't it? It's good when you have it, but when you don't have it, whether you like it or not, even if you are absolutely indifferent to art, you're not indifferent to its price. You're not indifferent to the person who bought it. For example, at an auction for $200 million. Why? Because you say, well, $200 million for some painting, right? You've already paid attention to his image. You have paid attention and invested your power of will in something empty. It is something empty for you, while for them it is income, on the invisible side. Yet, for instance, in the creative society, if you value art because there won't be material value, then paintings such as Black Square by Malevich or some other nonsense, excuse me, maybe I don't know anything about art, not maybe, but indeed I do not know anything about art, especially this kind of art, then its value is simply in the name. The exclusiveness is in the name. You see, there is a name. For us it's expensive, therefore it is valuable. While in the creative society there is no material value as such at all. In other words, anything you want can be copied and no expert will ever be able to distinguish it. That is, people insert this information in a public database, and if you want it, you will have the square by Malevich hanging anywhere. Are you going to admire it? Well, just a black canvas. Just look, the value of stupid things disappears, doesn't it?
Yes, for things they try to arouse a feeling of one's own exclusivity or something like that in a person.
Absolutely right. Well, their foolishness and stupidity will disappear, as well as manipulation. Why? It's meaningless. It makes no sense to take a canvas, simply splash paint on it, and sell it, because it is kind of the greatest work. You know, the combination of these drops of paint, it is such a...
Which chaotically
It is chaotic.
fell on the canvas.
Kind of an exclusive one, yes. Yet it's just the name. If the name costs money, then the canvas costs money. And if something exactly the same is made by a monkey or another person, then it's just a person who sprinkled some paint on it. But when Malevich did this, then it already costs money. Look, what a crazy world we live in fact, right? I mean, we invent a value for ourselves. Moreover, we begin to value what cannot have any value, in fact. It is just stupidity. Well, why do we need it in the creative society? It's all manipulation of people, hunting for vril. There will only be one uniqueness in the creative society, a human being. That's what is unique. His personality cannot be replicated. The body, yes, it can be copied. It is possible to create exactly the same body. Everything else, everything can be created and made, except personality. And that will be the most important element. Therefore, friends, there will be something exclusive in the creative society, but it will be more of a non-material value, because any matter can be transformed into anything. But a personality cannot be even reproduced, cloned, or anything else. It's unrealistic. You can clone his body, but can we actually clone a human as personality? Of course not. That's where the value is. And many people believe that since we are already talking about the creative society today, many people think for some reason that people will be idle. They will not work, will not want anything. What for if you have everything? And we will just degrade. No, friends, we will not degrade. On the contrary, I'll put it so, the creative society encourages people to grow, first of all, intellectually, to be creative, to do everything positive, and it encourages this very much. Why? Because the only way to attract attention to yourself, in the absence of exclusive items and all sorts of hairstyles, whatever else, fashion, everything that we use nowadays, all the tools of manipulation, will stop working. And that which you have done for society, your contribution to society, will be of value. And that's where a competition will actually take place. In other words, a mass of people will try to do as much as possible and as best as they can for the society. Why? Because for that they will receive our attention, attention of others, meaning the power of vril. Well, this is the most valuable thing in the universe. You see how it is? Let's say, even in the creative society, it will be valued anyway. So we will hunt for it. There will appear a new Forbes magazine, right? Let's say it will be not about those who robbed people the most, but those who did the most for people. That's what will be valued, right?
It turns out that even during the transition period, those people will actually be rich who have done a lot for society, right?
You see,
With a high efficiency for society.
for example, even during the transition period, when wealth is limited, there will be many of such people.
Well, yes, right.
Because money is nothing. In reality, while a contribution for humanity is extremely important, therefore naturally everything will change right away.
And the uniqueness of every person is in how he will fulfill himself in that, right?
Of course, what he does, how he does it, and how beneficial and useful it is. Even a small contribution, let's say, where it's impossible to robotize something, where human labor is needed, is already a contribution for society, rather than for yourself, because you're already provided for. Society has provided for you. And in return, you already provide for society. In other words, you do what you can for society. Isn't that interesting?
It is very interesting.
Let's just say, this will stimulate people. Again, for instance, nowadays a lot of people who made serious inventions burned out. Why? Because the world didn't see their inventions. They didn't get that vril, which they hunted for so much. They invested a huge amount of their attention in creating some product, for example. Take whatever, some discovery. And afterwards it became simply unnecessary. Why? Because someone uses it later, after a certain while, or is not beneficial to someone, so everything has been shelved. But in the creative society, when there is a single platform, that's unrealistic. I mean, any discovery that a person makes, or even an idea, will be posted on a single platform where it will immediately be seen by those who are interested in this trend, in development, let's say, in innovations and all the rest. Somewhere something might not be fully developed, and someone will be able to refine it. or it will immediately be introduced if it is worth implementing. Why? Because it is before the eyes of the entire humanity. Meanwhile, only humanity will have authority. Therefore, it will decide what is beneficial to it. That's the point. Thus, there will be no chance for any discovery valuable for society to be lost.
Instantaneous implementation of ideas, right?
As a matter of fact, yes. In other words, if something is valuable and important, then other people will see it anyway. And if it can improve our lives, it will be implemented in a flash. Look at how simple this
It
is.
will certainly affect the speed of society's progress.
Of course, and a person who has created it immediately becomes famous, thus, he obtains vril right away. You see how everything is interconnected, everything is honest, absolutely, whereas now, let's say the one who manipulates us also gets our vril, and it doesn't matter, friends, in what equivalent we express it. You see, vril, well, how to put it? In our understanding, vril can be of both positive and negative character. It is power, it's not energy. The difference is tremendous. So, when we hate a person, when we are angry at him, when we keep his image in our head, he receives our vril. When we love or respect a person, we give him our vril and he receives it, that is, we give our attention. Look at how interesting this is, right? It doesn't matter if you hate or love, you still give it. And imagine, everyone gives a tiny bit. And here's the result, right?
Right. I also remember that it is so valuable that in the creative society there will be freedom. Freedom for creativity. Freedom that will actually stimulate creativity.
Of course, for self-expression. This is very important too. Generally speaking, let's say, if we take the prospect, it is really wonderful. It's just a pity that people do not understand this. And the worst thing about this point is that people's consciousness and their lack of understanding is a stumbling block to implementation for everyone, and all people suffer from that. A lack of understanding by a few individuals of the entire seriousness and possibility of implementation of the creative society deprives the whole society of this prospect or holds it back. Well, it's okay, let's hope that people will understand. Moreover, there is nothing science-fictional here, it is absolutely realistic, and the most interesting thing is that everyone wants it. It is indeed that society which has already become ripe, because what is now happening in the world is simply, I'm not taking climate. In this case, I'm already taking geopolitics and economics. All these crises are man-made. It is what people do themselves. You have to agree that it's unpleasant to look at this and to live in this. Having the opportunity to live in the creative society, well, it's just somehow, I would say something, but people will understand me. I'll put it this way, it is very stupid.
You know, Igor Mikhailovich, in one of the videos where we discussed the nature of mass, when you ask the question, where is the mass and how is it formed? Our friends answer the following. You know, when Igor Mikhailovich asks such questions, at that moment our eyes light up. It is so interesting and so much of this inner enthusiasm arises.
Everyone is interested.
Despite the fact that it is very rare in the consumerist format of society, people are surprised in general when they encounter this feeling in their lives.
Because in consumer society, a person has no freedom. You just cannot physically do a lot of things that are interesting to you and that you would like to devote your time to. Well, work, everyday life, or something else. We are always busy. While in the creative society, a person is not overburdened with work. Let's just say, even if he needs to do some work, say that involves his presence, some physical activity, well, 4 hours, 4 times a week, that's not much. But the rest of the time a person is free and he can engage, let's say, in self-development and his creative self-expression, right? This is pleasant after all. This is interesting. I mean, this is really...
Such a thirst for knowledge.
Of course. Moreover, everyone has it. This is what makes us different from animals. That not only do we have a thirst for knowledge, but we also have a thirst for self-development. Some would say, come on, where would you develop, and so forth. Look around. I did look around, friends. I saw everyone and everything. And what some might be hinting at is actually the consequence of the consumerist format. And the problem we have with people today is precisely related to the fact that they live in such conditions. If we change the conditions, everything will change. And many of you will see how those whom we consider today to be backward people with addictions, how wonderful, very necessary, and helpful they actually can be. Even those whom we now consider to be thugs and criminals, such is life. Our consumerist format, and the fact that they got into this kind of environment is what actually made them such. But if you give a person an opportunity to express himself, to develop himself, if you give him, let's say, affluence, he will be completely different. That's the point. A person is, let's say, pliable and quick in his changes, if the conditions change, of course. Therefore, the creative society...
The state of enthusiasm will be kind of permanent and constant in the creative society.
Of course, this is interesting after all. Creativity is always interesting, especially since the opportunities that open up for each and every one of us are enormous. We've touched upon the topics we are talking about now and discussed previously. This is a very small part of the real opportunities that a person will gain in the creative society. And this is no longer science fiction, because most of the above mentioned already exists. It's just not available to us at the moment. Or let's say it is available to only a few. That's the whole point, right?
Whereas for creativity, freedom is needed.
By all means. Meanwhile, freedom is much more than, let's say, independence of one country from another. This may be good in the consumerist format, but in the creative society, the individual freedom of every person is much more important. Why? Because that's where creativity unfolds. Let's take Tesla, for example.
Right.
When he worked in St. Petersburg, for those who don't know, we will tell in a nutshell, he was invited to work in St. Petersburg, and he didn't make a single discovery in a year. He ran away from there. Why? Because a free bird sings only in freedom. It's the same with him.
Yes, he precisely said that as soon as the circumstances changed, ideas flooded me again like the Niagara Falls.
That's right. Why? Because he was free. Whereas when they didn't understand him, when they hindered him, well...
Yes, exactly.
Again, he found himself at a factory that had its own smart people, where they looked...
Its own engineers.
Of course. Competition along with envy. What are you telling us? We know better. And all that, so the person had no enthusiasm. And that's it. He just had to go to work and receive, well, a good salary, by the way, for those times. He was tempted a lot there. Again, back then, Tesla was even offered to stay in charge of all these developments. But he didn't want to. He ran away anyway. Why? Freedom was more valuable. Because he was a smart man and he knew the world from a slightly different perspective, right? Let's recall Tesla's words. He said, "In order to create, I must be absolutely free." Isn't that so?
He valued something different, yes.
He valued something different, therefore, freedom is very important. It's just that, let's put it carefully, most of us have never experienced it, so we do not know the entire value of this freedom. We are limited only by our imagination. We have an illusion of existence within strictly defined limits. That's where all the problems come from. We don't even have an idea of what a human being is and what his capabilities are. This is the trouble of a modern person.
And there is understanding how much our true scientists, who should be gathered in the creative society, need precisely this condition of freedom.
Of freedom, yes.
Which only the creative society provides.
You're saying it right. Many people might not understand why now. For example, under the threat of such global climate disasters, leaders cannot gather scientists at one table. They will put aside all their advanced research for a while, right? It's not a big deal to gather them, let them sit together, and they will find a solution. Now imagine, friends, based on the current conjuncture of today, expert scientists who work for France, UK, United States, Russia, and China sit around the table. Let's imagine that. Will they find a common language? Never. Why? Because they are ideologically divided. Because behind every scientist there will be a dozen of representatives of different secret services, so that a scientist wouldn't say too much, so that he wouldn't communicate with others and disclose secrets. Well, isn't that so? Yes, it is possible to send people who don't know any secrets, don't know anything, and don't have any skills. It is possible. But what is the use of them then? We have plenty of such people who gather in various organizations and sit around, but it's only getting worse for us because of that, and there are no prospects. Isn't that so? That's exactly the point. We need real experts, true scientists, who are currently developing secret weapons and the like. I mean practitioners, true practitioners, who know physics firsthand, who live by it. That's who should gather at the same table, and every one of them should be absolutely free at that. And they should have only one task: how to save the entire humanity. And in this case, if someone is going to look askance at another one, they will never have a resonance. Because if there is even one person in a group who creates dissonance, there will be no brainstorming. I mean, people won't be able to work in the same resonance. Well, this is an extremely important condition for brainstorming. Otherwise what? To gather people who have been irritated and set against each other at one table and say, go ahead and invent, well, what will they come up with?
Right, they see a threat in each other.
Well, of course. The example with Tesla was a good one. It's a certain violence along with serious constraints where there is only permission to think in that direction and not a word beyond that. People will see it who are driven into a corner, and none of them will be able to invest a sufficient amount of their attention in solving this issue. Thus, to put it simply, they won't be able to solve anything. That's the answer.
Yes, a very vivid picture emerges of the difference between just a meeting of scientists or their temporary coalition and a real brainstorming session.
Surely.
That it's already on a different plane, on the plane of this inner freedom.
Of course.
You know, we have touched upon Tesla, and he actually also said that intuition and intuitive gaining of knowledge immediately was very important for him.
Of course.
And not even some kind of logic at first.
No, he received a holistic picture and afterwards he tried to explain it logically. Well, the topic is a little bit...
Now everything is different, the
Yes,
opposite.
the topic of our meeting is a little bit different.
Yes, from the other side.
Therefore, let's not touch upon that. But in order for people, true scientists, to sit down at one table, all barriers should really be removed. Otherwise, nothing will work. Just like all the rest, we would like to have a solution on the table, and so that indeed, I'll put it this way, so that the climate problem would actually be exaggerated by us, so that the coming threats would simply not exist, so that it would become a little bit warmer, let it rather be CO2, the anthropogenic one, when we slightly reduce consumption of hydrocarbons or something else, stop emitting CO2, restrain the warming so that it doesn't exceed 2 degrees and everything will be fine. We wish it were so, honestly. I'm for it with both of my hands, but the trouble is that there is the Cerberus. You know, he doesn't care about our desires. It's a ruthless creature. Unfortunately, it's in our backyards, and it has already come to many homes. That's the trouble. And at this point, it becomes absolutely incomprehensible. To me, as a representative of humankind, I simply cannot understand at all why, knowing and understanding what's going on, and having a logically grounded way out of the current situation, people don't do that. I just don't understand. Haven't people realized that the climate is a serious problem and there will be no way back? Haven't people really understood yet that nothing will go back anymore, and that we have the only way out? It is indeed to gather all the scientists at one table. Moreover, they should be absolutely free and to find a solution to a very complicated task. Here, you know, as a human, I'm just scared to look at the world, to watch the news, where politicians keep fighting, where they focus our attention on Completely different problems, terrible, serious problems. But those are man-made problems that we can actually resolve. Well, not us, but politicians can resolve them, but they don't do that. Let's just say they keep worsening and aggravating the situation at the time when in reality we are all under threat. Even their advisors and their scientists already start speaking in plain language. Yes, they continue to speak in the same paradigm of that very CO2, that we have no more than 10 years of time, and that's all. Well, if I were in the shoes of those politicians, I would ponder, but you can see how they act. They have other tasks and other goals. Yet they are merely people, the same as us. Don't they really want to live? It's worth thinking about.
They want to live and definitely ask themselves the main question. What do their voters think about this? That's the main question they ask when you come to them.
Oh, this point. When you encounter politicians, indeed, as Tatiana said, the first question they ask is, what does my electorate think about that? I mean, a person doesn't care at all what will happen to him, to his child, or even to his country. The main point for him is to be supported by his voters. You know, to be honest, I lack words. I just don't want to go deeper into this topic. It's not our topic. Our topic is building the creative society. It's a wonderful future for everyone. That's where it makes sense to invest our attention, because it is promising and it is realistic. So friends, let's just love each other. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Igor Mikhailovich.
Thank you, friends. Peace be with you.